So force summation. To give an object acceleration, the amount of force given to the object is determined by the sum of all forces generated by each body part. So really generating the biggest force possible using the highest number of muscles as possible throughout our movement. How can we generate maximum force? So the first step is to use as many parts as possible. Now we said this before, it's the sum of all parts. So if I use more body parts, they all add up to increase the amount of force generated onto something. So the more muscles used, the greater summation of force that can be transferred into. So this clean and jerk demonstrates force summation in the sense that when you watch it, so you watch his legs here and they stand up pretty centrally and they move as one with his calves, but watch his shoulders and his chest and then his arms. And notice how the bigger center muscles right in the middle move first, followed by the finer muscles on the outside. So if we play this and watch this, so as you can see, he's getting ready, stands up, okay, but watch his shoulders. So they're pulling at the moment and then really lifting into the shoulders, the deltoids, the traps, the bis, everything to lift and haul this bar up onto his shoulders. And then we're going up the other way using his calves, quads, hamstrings, core to stand up and lift that weight. So step 2 is correct sequencing. Body parts should move in the correct sequence. All the body parts don't start moving at once. The bigger central muscles go first through to the finer muscles that are used last. Now distal means that they are the muscles furthest away from the center. So when you think about when you do your rotations, we always start with our core in the middle, okay, then we might go up through our trunk, and then we go out through our arms and then finally to the projectile. So that's what it means by correct sequencing. We need to move our body in correct sequencing in order to generate the maximum force required. So if we take this example of a jump shot, okay, the correct sequencing is to use our quadriceps first. Okay, so we're using our quadriceps here into our glutes. So as we extend our quadriceps, our glutes activate, okay, transferring that weight from here across into our glutes. Then it goes from our quads into our glutes, transfer of weight, into our pecs, okay, and then finally it gets transferred from our quads to our glutes to our pecs. So summation of forces, we're using the correct sequence into our deltoids, our triceps, and then finally our wrist flexor. So that's the correct sequence. If we were to just use our deltoids, tris, and wrist flexor, we wouldn't get the greater distance, we wouldn't get greater accuracy. Okay, and you know that from experience. So it's important that we use the correct sequencing. How can we generate maximum force? Well, so step 3 is using correct timing. So muscles need to be used and accelerated with the correct timing. When trying to produce maximum force, each segment should move the instant the previous segment begins to reach peak force and slow down. This ensures no force is lost between body parts and the last body part has the most force and speed to transfer into the object. So this is a really good visual representation of that. So here, this is force. So force starts low in the legs, it peaks up here, and then it drops off again. Now, if I were to move my legs and then I rotate my hips too early, my peak force is over here. Oh, sorry, my peak force for the legs is over here, but I've started to move my hips earlier on lower peak force. Same thing, if I'm moving too early, my peak is actually up here, but I'm moving too early to the peak here, move too early. It peaks after my wrist has moved, giving me a total force that is only this much. Put that into comparison against perfectly timed. So force starts from 0, I generate force, okay, and then at the peak is when I rotate or I engage my hips. Generate force at the peak, engage my shoulders. Peak, engage my elbows. At the peak, engage my wrists. And look how much force there is just by moving my body parts in the correct sequence. Okay, and then similar to too early, if we move or engage our body parts too late, after peak force has occurred, then obviously our overall force is going to be lower than what is optimal. So keeping that in mind, you'll be able to time and see your body parts when they move through your videos to see if they're well timed. Step 4 is the greatest range of motion. So each muscle should go through its greatest range of motion so it can accelerate to its maximum speed and generate maximum force, which just makes sense. If I'm already standing up and I'm ready to do a free throw, okay, I'm not putting my legs through the range of motion. Okay, if I'm bending down, hunched over, I can then engage my legs, put them through the range of motion and lift up. Similar to this golfer here. Okay, range of motion for the deltoid and even the hips are much smaller than over here, they are much greater. So obviously this one over here is going to create the most force, this one is not going to create as much. Okay, so as you can see, he's not rotating around anywhere near as much. So the rotation from here to impact, which is down here, is only the 90 degrees. Whereas here, he's got the impact, which is greater than 90 degrees, which means he's going to be able to generate more speed, more force. With golf, okay, as you can see, we wind back, but when we move forward, we'll rotate our hips first, followed by the shoulder second. Then our elbow will come through, our hands will come through, and then finally the club head will come through last. So we start in the middle and then we work our way out in terms of movement. So keep that in mind when we think about force summation. And really, force summation can be found or identified in almost all sports that involve the transfer of force into an object. Okay, we've got cricket bowl here. Okay, we're stepping forward, we're rotating our hips through, okay, followed by our shoulders through, then followed by our lower arm, and then by our hand up here. Tennis, same thing, we're rotating our hips around, torso around, shoulder comes through, elbow comes through, hand comes through, racket head comes through last. Okay, remembering that graph we had on the previous page. At the peak force, we should engage our next body part. Discus throw, exact same thing. Okay, hips, shoulders, all this going around in circles. Okay, and then we're going. So hips, shoulders,